Hey everyone, I'm Bryan and I'm going to talk and discuss Quest IP TDR capabilities. We've all heard of the market segment Identity Threat Detection Response. One of the things that we feel at Quest is often overlooked is the silent P, prevention. What can we do, in fact, to be able to prevent and reduce the likelihood of an attack impacting the entire organization? So with Security Guardian is built to reduce the identity attack surface, safeguard critical assets, and enable organizations to detect, contain, and respond to identity-based threats quickly and effectively. That probably sounds like what a lot of other vendors out there do as well. So I figure I'm going to try to show and highlight exactly how I feel that we're a little bit different in the industry. One of the first key things to note is the different data we are getting. At Quest, for your Active Directory, we completely write our own logs. We do not rely upon the native logs and auditing to be turned on to gather the information that is required. Since we write our own logs, we can add our own different parameters out there as well. So as organizations are implementing a modern security framework, you may have heard of the enterprise access model or the ESAE architecture, whatever it is. There's this concept of tiering. Tiering has really been evangelized and pushed to do in Active Directory since about 2012. However, most organizations aren't doing it. Tiering in traditional sense really began in the 70s with the Biba and Bell LaPadula security models. So at Quest, we want to help you implement those modern models, which not all objects are created equally. And we want to be able to add additional controls. Those objects that have impacted could affect the entire organization. So that could be considered tier 0 or the control plane. The control plane is those objects that can affect change on other different objects. And we help you with a baseline of that initial set that's industry accepted that many people don't really realize they have the misconfigurations in their different environment. Identity is the new perimeter. You keep hearing that word. I'd argue that identity is the original perimeter. What we're doing with Security Guardian is we combine your hygiene information, what an attacker could do. We baseline activity so we can see when abnormal activity is occurring. And we are purpose-built to help you make sense of the most common tactics, techniques, and procedures that affect your identity systems. In the AD world, you may think of Mimikatz and DC Shadow or Golden Ticket, some of those different words out there. We are purpose-built to look at those specific things that are occurring to let you and your organization know about it. Not only that, another unique thing we have within Security Guardian is drift of your control plane. Likely you're spending a lot of work to try to secure your environment, but every day changes are happening, and one change and one bad misconfiguration can cause a relationship to the control plane. So we're looking and focusing on any changes to that control plane so you can actually revert it back right away if there was an accidental relationship that was made, or you can choose to protect it differently at that given point of time because if an object hasn't changed on the control plane, that could cascade down to the entire organization. Which leads us to our prevention and containment for Active Directory under attack. So for on-premises AD, we have more power because we do have our architecture. We're able to intercept and block different things from happening. With Intro ID, we're capturing the different logs that are made available via API coming in. Ideally, your organization has reference architecture. Likely, you'll have a PAM type tool. The privileged access management tools on the market. We have one identity safeguard. There's CyberArk. There's Thycotic. There's Beyond Trust. A lot of people have those different PAM type tools. We can ensure that reference architecture is being enforced where they have to go through that to make a change to inside the different control plane that we have vetted. So we can enforce it, which will actually sever and remove some different relationships Well, we're not really removing it natively, but we're going to identify it so we can block it if anything ever actually attempts to ensure they have to go through that process to make a change to the control plane. The other thing we have in here is shields up. Ideally, you probably have like an assessment done of your, identity structure with a huge list of different things you have to fix. We do give recommendations on how to fix that stuff, but people can't make that change overnight. You're always worried about protecting your business, making sure you have operations occurring. But at different time periods, maybe you're under attack, we want to do some level of containment because the fact of the matter is attacks will happen. Think about zero trust. You must assume breach. Somebody will click on that email that was created by somebody else. If they can elevate up, they're going to try to. So shields up tries to limit the blast radius so it can't affect the control plane. It's an extra control we can put in place. Because the fact of the matter is, most different attacks that are happening are coming from an unmanaged device using native binaries that already exist in your network. So this is an additional control we can put in place to ensure the entire environment is not affected by any single breach. Now, the way that we're doing this, first things first, we're not bolt-on security. We do want our customers to change. So the typical experience we have is we want you to help you identify your most critical assets. That is the control plane, i.e. tier 0. And here you can see highlighted, there's a relationship with a group policy that's being categorized as tier 0 because they can affect change on one different tier 0 object. We're analyzing those relationships. So either I can sever that relationship and reduce the quantity of things I have in the control plane, or I can agree that this should be treated differently and I can protect it. We had a customer last year where we did this initial assessment and every one of their objects was being categorized as tier 0. That means if any one of their accounts was breached, it could have been game over for the entire organization. Looking at it, we saw that this had domain users as a member of print operators. A lot of people don't realize, but if you're print operators, you have rights where you can do stuff on a domain controller as an example. If I can get access to a domain controller, I can do stuff. So as soon as they severed that relationship, the quantity of their objects went way down, and they were immediately able to reduce their risk just by that one change they were able to help focus on. Once you've identified your most critical objects, now we can put additional controls in place. This is where organizations need to determine what processes should they have to make a change to anything within their control plane. This is typically why organizations purchase privileged access management tools. Now we can enforce it. Now to make a change of that natively, you must go through that approved process. If you're trying to use your native rights that may have had a relationship, it's going to come back with a detected event of somebody attempted to do this, but they are not going to allow it to actually go through. Thinking about zero trust, one of the commandments is secure assets by risk and validate trust explicitly. In Active Directory and antiquated authentication, we can't verify every single authentication stream that's happening. So what we can do is we can actually exclusively put controls in place where they must go through this different process for any of your control plane objects. Another key buzzword term that's out there is identity posture management. This is really a lot of different hygiene information that you need to take advantage of in your organization. We do this both for your Active Directory as well as Enter ID. As you can see here, we have an example that's highlighted. The non-tier 0 account can create delegated managed service accounts in OU or container. Last year, there was a vulnerability nicknamed Bad Successor, and within just a few days, we actually were able to create a finding. So any of our customers that had this behavior existing were made aware of it. This is helping out with your threat research. A lot of people are surfing LinkedIn and Twitter for the latest vulnerabilities that are happening. If it's identity related to Active Directory or Enter ID, We're doing some heavy lifting for you so we can bring that visibility to see if it's applicable for you in your environment. Now, threat detection. If somebody is actually doing something, we need to be able to see what it is. We at Quest are trying to reduce the amount of signals that go off to your security operations center. So what's really unique about Quest is we're looking at not just hygiene and activity and anomalous activity, but you see here any drift to your tier 0 stuff. So looking at my presentation here, I'm going to do my highlighter. This, the 80 database, I think we're pretty unique here. I don't see a lot of other vendors auditing or protecting the DIT file. We do have a control we can put in place. Maybe you do have something, ask your vendors, but many of the other ITDR solutions don't have this capability because they don't have an agent on the different DCs. They can't audit or be able to protect those different things. Other unique things I feel we have, tier 0 group policy object changes, and these things that say tier 0, it's only because we've defined those and categorized that where we can see the different changes there. Here's an interesting one. Tier 0 user logons to computers that are not tier 0. You're not doing the best practices of what's in your different model. So ideally, you start putting those different controls in place, going back to the basics, and now we have a control put in place, or we have the ability to detect if that is not being adhered to right here. So the critical activity, you can subscribe to get alerted to any of these different things. We have that out of the box. There's no configuration required here to get this different data. Now, hygiene information will give you a lot of information about what the attacker could potentially do, and we want you to remediate those, but you can't necessarily do that overnight. So if an attack ever does happen, somebody's in there, and your threat profile has changed, we have the ability to go to DEFCON level 3, so to speak, or go shields up. Shields up is really, from the concept of the DEFCON levels, different time periods, you want to do things a little bit differently. So shields up, if you're worried about something affecting the entire organization, you have the power to put that control in place in hopes of preventing the blast radius from affecting the entire organization. We'd rather one person be affected with access to an application versus the entire organization. That is what Shields Up is empowered to do. Interestingly enough, we've had customers implement the Shields Up capabilities with zero impact to their business. The organization had good, policies put in place. So when they finally did implement this, because thing was happening, there was an imminent threat, they decided to keep it on 24/7 so they can continue maintaining, these best practices and enforcing that people had to go through an existing reference architecture to begin with. Quest also has AI capabilities. This is where we have Security Guardian Intelligence. Now, we're seeing a lack of AD expertise in the market. So we want to be able to help translate and upskill lesser skilled people to be able to do more. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of projects are failing because technical people can't speak at the business level. So we automatically translate business risk from Active Directory Intra ID into manners that business leaders can understand. One good example here, using industry best practices, what are the top vulnerabilities to remediate based on lowest operational risk to the environment? All the different things you see here can very easily be done with very low likelihood of causing any kind of operational impact. And we can start making you more secure faster. Even the enablement to do some more remediation, right? You need a script to fix this different thing. We can very quickly do that to implement in your different organization. The other context information, lesser skilled people may not know what they need to be asking. So much of the stuff we're doing in Security Guard Intelligence includes default prompts to kind of lead you down like, hey, you should be looking at this, click on this, and it'll give you more of the information that you're looking for. The last major point that I want to kind of focus on is your non-human identities. We've all heard about the problems in Active Directory around group management, identifying who the owners of these different groups can or should be. The fact of the matter is, with AI happening, more and more service principals and intra ID are getting added on a daily basis. And it's becoming a big problem as people are implementing the different AI projects. So as you see here, we're getting information about where owners aren't being assigned. We have to get ahead of this problem before it spirals out of control. We're adding a lot more different features and functionality in the future, even extending out to your on-premises service accounts, which I would consider a non-human identity because it's not associated with a human being with a heartbeat. So more to come in this different area into Security Guardian. One key to note about Security Guardian, this is not new technology we're dealing with. Part of the Quest family has been dealing with auditing and protection. I've been here almost 24 years during that entire time period. It is built by identity people for identity people. We're leveraging some of our older technologies, lessons learned we've had my entire tenure of Quest to build Security Guardian to really help our customers truly do something that can protect the entire organization. We have the high fidelity signals to give to you, so you aren't going to overwhelm your SOC with too many different alerts to begin with. And then we have AI to help us communicate this very technical jargon to the business that we have out there as well. So if you want to get any more information about this, go much more in depth. You can definitely try out Security Guardian, or feel free to give us a call and we can talk one-on-one and help you out. Thank you.